And so I am very excited to announce that we are going to be having our irrigation panel. We are joined here today by Dave Morneau, Rich Lewis, and Maggie McKenzie. I know that they have their bios, and so they're going to be talking a little bit more about themselves, so I'm going to pass it on over to them.
Thanks, Haley. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to act as the moderator today, and then Rich and Maggie and myself will all be panelists. Maggie and Rich are homegrown locals from Cheyenne, master gardeners, and we all enjoy gardening. I'm from Lander, so I bring a little different perspective. But we all irrigate small acreage gardens. Before we begin, we're going to do a little poll. So all you need is your hand. I'm going to ask you some questions. And if you feel like you need a lot of help, then give me a 1. If you think you're practically an expert, then you're going to give me a 5, okay? You ready? Get your hands ready now. Okay, so what do you consider your biggest knowledge gaps in irrigating your garden or small acreage? 1, choosing the right system or method of irrigation. So how are you on that? Do you know what you need to do? Okay, I'm looking for, keep it up there. All right, good, that's good to know. We're going to spend a lot of time on methods, so that's good. Proper operation of your system, how are you doing on that? Whoever's doing it, whoever needs to. Okay, we got some 2s and some 1s, all right? What about irrigation system maintenance? How are we doing on that? Oh boy, lots of 1s. Okay. Lots of 1s. All right, we will spend some time on maintenance. Maintaining the ditch or well, basically your water source. That's really important. Is that an issue with anybody? Okay, oh wow, we got some 1s. A 0. And then correct timing of irrigations. This is sometimes pretty challenging for people, knowing when to water. Okay, great. All right. So this is a postcard you can pick up at a donut shop in Du Bois. It's pretty funny, I think, but that is a Western pastime discussing water rights. I put that lower on the list when I first put this presentation together. That was from my area. That's our primary water source, but I switched things around for this presentation. I think well water and municipal water tend to be sources for people that live in Cheyenne and outside of Cheyenne. My understanding is for you guys, you're both well water? Well water. Yeah. Rainwater is a source that you should consider. I mean, we don't have a lot of rain, but snow in the about this time of year. For example, when I left Lander, wasn't sure if I was going to even make it yesterday. We had 15 inches of wet snow. And so all of our buildings, like my cabin shed and all that, have a big blanket. And then as I was leaving, it was starting to slide down and then make big piles below, on the outside of my house, where a lot of our gardens are. And so that dump of snow can really help get a lot of our plants going. And some people will collect the snow and the rain with their gutters and then have some kind of tank or reservoir and then a drip system from that. So I think that there's some opportunistic water there, but I think it's short-lived. Our water source isn't, if we're not familiar with our water source, like if we move to a new property, it's something that we want to investigate. So you should probably test it, and we have several testing resources here. The WDA Analytical Services Lab that's the Department of Ag lab, is in Laramie. A lot of UW Extension offices will give you opportunities or resources to test your water. Wyoming conservation districts, many of them around the state have well testing programs. Like the Pocosia Conservation District, where I work, we have May 15th every year, or the middle of May, we offer a number of different programs, and irrigation water quality is one that you can find. Some of the common parameters, we're kind of looking for salts and different minerals. Some of the things that we're looking for, there's two different problems that could happen. Some of the elements or analytes can cause problems to your plants, but also some of the like calcium and other minerals can cause problems with your irrigation system and clog the orifices on your drip system. So it's good to know what those challenges will be. And then there's different treatment options depending on how desperate or willing you are to go. For some people, there might be multiple water source options. So like maybe somebody inherited a well and it's just not deep enough, or it's just really poor, salty or sulfury soil, or water, I'm sorry. And you may decide, you know what, I'm just going to have to use municipal water. It's going to be more expensive, but if I want to grow plants, that's what I'm going to have to do. So, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Doing good.
Rich has hard water, but he's decided that it's not worth the effort to use a water softener for all the water that he's using. But in his system, it's not an issue. All right, let's talk about methods. I know a lot of you are interested in what methods should we use. So there's lots of considerations. Soil is really important. It's good to know what your soil type is. I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but write this down. If you Google Web Soil Survey, that's a really handy tool. The whole United States comes up, and you put your address in there, and it'll take you right to your place, and then you can look up what soils you have. We're going to talk more detail about soils in a minute. Your field shape and slope is important. A lot of times, small acreage folks, we're not too concerned about slope and field size because we're either doing drip or sprinkler. But there's some people that may flood their little small acreage garden. My vegetable garden growing up, we have an irrigation ditch, and we just made a little gated pipe out of 2-inch pipe and put cork holes in there, and we flooded our vegetable garden in the beginning years. Your water quality and quantity is something you need to consider. The crops, your knowledge, maintenance, there's a lot of things to consider. So let's start with surface and flood irrigation. And this is probably not what many of us are going to be doing, but if you're in a agricultural area where there is irrigation water, this is something you could consider. There's high labor involved. You need a level field or a sloping field, and it requires a lot of water. A lot of times, open ditch irrigation is, what a lot of the settlers back in the day began with, but many of us in the ag industry have converted to gated pipe irrigation. And you need to understand what your set times are, know how many gates and stream size that you're going to use. One thing you need to consider is the timing. And so these pictures here just kind of show how, even though the water on the surface may have got into the end of your vegetable row, you still need to allow it time to sink into that soil profile. Otherwise, you might have dry crops at the end of your rows. So we're going to have Rich share his rain gutter gardening system. This falls, it's really unique, but it falls in that category of flood irrigation. Why don't you grab the mic there, Rich?
See if I can turn it on. Yeah, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. This is an example of the rain gutter gardening system. Up there, that's what I have in my house. That's a 10-foot rain gutter. And at the bottom there, you'll see a float. And all it is a way to water a container. I use 5-gallon buckets. Go to the next slide. And you see I also use a mixing tub. This is the kind that they use to mix cement in. What it is you just put a hole in the bottom of your container. I'll show you, like that. You put a hydroponic net cup in that, fill your container up with your potting soil. You hook up your water source at the end, and it floods the gutter, and by capillary action, it waters your system.
So Rich, how did this come to be? How did you come up with this system? What was the motivation?
The motivation was, as I got older, it was harder to get up off the ground gardening. You know, getting down there and picking those weeds up, so I started going to containers. Well, that was fine, but I wanted something that was still easier, so I started looking. I thought about doing a drip system, a lot of components to that. Then I saw this on the internet, rain gutter gardening system. It was developed by Larry Hall back in Minnesota, and I put mine up on sawhorses, waist level, so now I do all my gardening standing up. A lot easier on me. So that's how I come about getting into this system.
Great.
That's a net cup, you buy it online. The floats, you buy them online. Everything else you can buy locally at your hardware store.
So Rich, you find that even the new plants get adequate water, or do you ever have to do some surface watering to get them started?
I don't do any surface water.
Okay, great. Great, thank you. Okay, let's go to sprinkler irrigation. This is a method that my family, we use quite a bit. We have in Lander there, we have a cattle ranch, and then we have 3 generations that all work with gardens. And my in-laws grew up in Pennsylvania and kind of Amish country, and we do a lot of canning and anything extra. We'll eat fresh, then we do a lot of canning, then we sell stuff at the farmers markets. But the sprinkler irrigation, we typically use the big gun sprinkler carts there on the top left, and the tripod systems. The big guns we'll just put right in the center of so like our garden is probably as big as this room, and we'll put the big gun right there, and it'll just go around and around. Usually we'll water once a week or once every 5 days, and it might go all night. A lot of times it's a good way to conserve water. And typically the winds are less at nighttime, so that's what we typically do. The tripod system, you can set those sprinklers so that they'll just do, 180 degrees or 90 degrees, so they work good in the corners or on the sides of your garden. There's a lot of different methods here, but the benefits, you have more water conservation, of course, than flood, and then it's automated. There's some concerns. There's some increased maintenance. You need to make sure you have a constant water supply. Water quality, if you're taking water from a ditch, you need to make sure you're filtering. Anytime you start going to a nozzle, you can have an issue. So you want to make sure that the water is clean and won't jam the nozzle. There's going to be more cost there can be some issues with wind. You guys don't have any wind though, right? Okay. So again, I think one way to get around that is to water in the evenings. All right, let's go to the low flow or drip irrigation method. And Maggie's our local expert here, so she's going to talk through these slides. Go ahead, Maggie.
Scary expert. I do have quite a few years under my belt in Laramie County. My home is out west of the Arboretum, or the research station. I don't know if you all have been out there to see. And then we've got a couple of gardens here in town too that, so we've done both municipal water source for our drip systems. Here, this particular slide shows the team garden for the Boys and Girls Club that's at St. Joseph's. We just built this garden last year, and we were operated off of city water. Yeah, I guess we're skipping over concerns and benefits. Huh?
Well, yeah, what are some of the benefits to you, Maggie?
Yeah, the benefits for me have been flexibility. The garden at home has been kind of grown, sprawled across our small acreage, and I've been able to do tree lines and vegetable patch and ornamentals. That's really the only way we are able to water our garden out there. We haven't trenched in any lines to run sprinklers or done any of the big heavy stuff. It's very easy to put these systems together. They're lightweight. You do have a lot of plastic out there, but my experience too is that it's been pretty resilient and has put up with the sun and the elements over the course of, well, it was 1989 that we moved into our house out there, and I think there's still some of that original drip line that's out there watering trees. So it's held up pretty well for the most part.
So here's, we just showed your residence from the bird's eye view there, and then here's some of the different crops and methods that you're using your drip with.
Right, yeah, there's an example, the tree with the ring around it. So that's this type of drip line. It's got emitters, it's a half-inch emitter line, and you can just plug it into your solid main line and run that around the drip line of your tree and do a pretty good job of watering your trees that way. That bottom slide is more kind of this type of deal where you're using the 1/4-inch lines to water ornamentals or vegetables. I've gotten to where I don't use emitters all that often anymore. They're kind of a maintenance problem. This is a 1/4-inch emitter line, and the thing I like about it is that if one of the emitters in the line plugs off, you still have more emitters to help you out. So those are kind of the benefits I've discovered using drip.
Great, let's talk about the operation of drip systems.
Yeah.
You put a timer on your system?
We do. We use timers. The garden you saw earlier, the one at St. Joseph's, the Boys and Girls Club garden, that garden gets visited about once a week. So we have a timer, and it makes the water come on once a day. It's a programmable timer. We've had several gardens at the Boys and Girls Club, and we use those timers extensively for gardens that we can't sit on a lot like you can your home garden, but they're also very handy at home. Both mechanical and programmable timers have been real worthwhile.
Maggie, down on spacing, so you're talking about the built-in emitters, where it's swollen there. Do you lay your line down and then put the plants where the emitters are? Okay.
Yeah, well, I guess I also do seed rows.
Okay.
Just right along, but I do tend to run plants their seeds along the emitter line so that, you know, for sure they're gonna get some water. Let's see.
We're going to talk about filtering in a minute, and here's some of the test cases where Maggie's
So we have the Boys and Girls Club main site, which is on West Jefferson. That, we had a combination source there where they put in an irrigation well and had a spring box kind of thing. That has been pretty problematic. We're still not sure why it doesn't work, but we do have municipal water supply option there. And so I think that's kind of what we've had to resort to. And then we had a garden for 2 years, 2 years here at LCCC, and then it was needed by another program, so we went and twisted the Catholic Church's arm to let us build the one over at St. Joseph's. And the residential garden is total well supply. And with that, do we have the,
so let's get into all the components. She's got some great slides here.
Yeah, and there's samples of most of this stuff if you want to see what it looks like. This is a filter. So this hooks up to your hose bib. And then there's a screen in here. I don't know, how many of you have wells at your house? How many of you have sandy wells at your house? Anybody? No? We have lots of sand in our well, and that has been probably one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, is to clean that filter out about once every 3 days, because the sand will plug it off, and then I won't have any water at the end of the drip line. It just really reduces the pressure.
Speaking of that, what about pressure reducers?
Yeah, these little guys. These small lines require 30 psi or less, or else you'll kind of blow your lines off. But the bigger system, if I'm not running the small 1/4-inch line, we have our pressure tank set to run from 30 to 60 psi, and so I haven't had to use pressure reducer for when I'm on a total 1/2-inch system. So if all of your line is 1/2-inch, you don't really have to drop the pressure down like you do with these small lines.
Talk about lines and emitters. Talk a little bit about
I think
that.
I did already kind of talk about that, didn't I? So these just plug in. I like these little 1/4-inch valves. Do most of you grow tomatoes in your veggie patch? Do you starve your tomatoes of water to get them to ripen? That was a trick I learned in Master Gardener class, that when they're not ripening, you cut back on the water. And these little valves make it really easy to cut back on your tomato water and maybe let your cabbages keep getting water, or your squash plants. So it allows you some more local control within your vegetable patch. This is just a solid connector to a solid line with a button emitter on the end. And these kinds of things I use more now for containers than in-ground planting. They work pretty well that way.
Great.
And let's see what else. Oh, yeah.
Your fittings.
Fittings, yes. So these are kind of the old style compression fittings. They're awful. I don't like them very much. I still have too many in my warehouse.
What's wrong with them, Maggie?
Well, they tend to blow up in the winter. They collect water, and the rigid plastic, the ice will freeze and fracture your plastic. And then in order to replace them, you wind up shortening your line because you have to cut. You can't get them off unless you cut your line. These new guys, the Easy Lock, are sort of new, where you put the line over this little I don't know what you would call that thing. Anyway, you put the line over that and then lock it on by screwing it down. And so if the fitting itself doesn't make it through the winter, or you find some other issue with it, it's really easy to just pull it off the line and put a new one on.
Great. And then you talked a little bit about valves, and what about end plugs?
Yeah, the infamous goof plug for the 1/4-inch line, and just also the plugs that sometimes if you punch a hole you don't want, you can close it off with one of these. These are a fairly inexpensive way to end your 1/2-inch line. You just bend the end of the line over, place it through. I don't know how to run on here. Very easy. So it looks like that when it's assembled. I also use hose adapters with caps a lot to end lines. That works well, especially to check your line and make, you know, we have black spaghetti strung all over the prairie, and so to go out and make sure that my filter's not plugged up and the water's making it for the full length of the line, it's pretty nice to just be able to unscrew the cap off the hose adapter.
Great. And then the tools of the trade, Maggie.
Yeah. This is the one that I use most. I think they're like $1 maybe. They're pretty inexpensive. Just a little punch. So that just makes, you just punch a hole into the line, and then you can insert these connectors. There is an emitter that I do like a lot that I do use for newly planted trees and shrubs. They're tiny little guys, but they're kind of thick on the end. And so what they do, they're a pressure compensating emitter. So whatever they're rated for, they're supposed to be good for pretty much the length of your line. The other thing that they say they do, and I think they do fairly well, is they're a self-cleaning emitter. But they do require this little special tool. You punch a hole in the line and then you stick your emitter in here and it'll actually insert it into the drip line. Oh yeah, this is just a larger punch. It puts a bigger hole. And some of these fittings will have kind of a big end on them. And so the smaller punch doesn't punch big enough hole. I also use nails, so you have to be careful you don't run them through your line all the way.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's talk about maintenance. That way we had a lot of 1 and 2 fingers on this one. You know, you can sum it up by saying 1 part inspection, 2 parts anticipation. It's good to check your systems to make sure that they're working properly, and you know, often. Just don't assume that they're going to work all season long, but expect that you may have some issues, or you know, just be looking morning and night. You know, you may come out and see a huge puddle of water, and like, oh boy, what's going on here? The 2 parts anticipation is you need to be prepared, and so like Maggie's got all these parts and pieces and tools. You know, I'm sure Rich has you know, an extra float around, and so it's important that you know, you can't assume that the parts store or the Baumgars or whatever where you get your supplies are going to be open all the time. So it's good to have things ready. We're not going to talk a whole lot about the surface, but the sprinkler, you know, I make sure that I have nozzles and I have some extra heads, ways that I can, you know, those flappers just wear out. By the way, one thing that I've done, like on my wheel lines, that I've learned over the years is, you'll see on those flappers, they start to get worn, a groove so that then the flappers doesn't line up with the nozzles correctly. I just use electrical tape and I just fill that hole in, and that actually works. I get more life out of my sprinkler heads that way. Checking for leaks is also important. Maggie, let's talk a little bit about the drip irrigation maintenance. You don't seem to have issues with the mineral buildup because you've got your filters, or you do have mineral buildup.
Yeah.
Here, why don't you use your mic? So what do you do there? Do you need to do a system flush every so often?
No, we kind of flush particulates out the end sometimes. Even with the sand filter, we can wind up with the end full of sand.
Okay.
Trap it. You have to replace emitters occasionally.
Okay.
We have high TDS just like Rich. I think most groundwater supplies, you'll have fairly high dissolved solids in your water if you live in Laramie County. And yeah, it's hard on emitters, and again, that's kind of why I like the emitter lines, because if one goes, you've got others to fall back on.
Good. Some people have issues with animal damage. Voles have been horrible across Wyoming the last couple years, and we have a drip in our high tunnel. We haven't had issues with them chewing on the lines, but we have had issues with them chewing on our lettuce and our peas. So we put in those high frequency, what are they? You can't hear them, but you put them. Sonic, yes. They're like sonic emitters that I hang them in my high tunnel, and that actually works. I mean, if I don't get them out quick enough, I see a lot of rodent activity. Then you need power for those, but I plug those in, and that seems to keep them away. All right, let's talk about the timing, the importance of scheduling. When, how much do I put on? So, it really depends on your crop type and the maturity. I mean, of course, you're going to be giving your tomatoes less water when they're young than when they're a huge plant producing a lot of putting on fruit. Your weather variability. We've been talking about outside and inside irrigation. Obviously, if you're indoors, those high tunnels can get really hot, and we find usually, like my father-in-law will say, "Dave, you need to adjust the timer." So usually, I set it for maybe half an hour. My drip system early on in May and June. Then when I get to July, I'm bumping my timer up because the plants are getting bigger and it's getting hotter. They're requiring more water. Rich, why don't you tell us a little bit about a moisture meter that you've used in the past?
Yeah, I have found that just for the sake of knowing, a little meter here that I bought at Lowe's, it was like $15, and it checks for moisture, light, and pH, but I only use the moisture. And I just stick it in there, and I have yet to find me down below moist on any of mine. So for me, it's just a matter of playing around, so to say, just stick it in, and okay, then I don't have any problem with drying up or anything, because it's a constant flow irrigation system.
But you can let the plant tell you if there's some moisture stress. We're going to get into that in a little bit, how you can check the soil for moisture levels. Here's some average precipes in the area. You guys are in pretty good shape. Over my way and Jeremiah's way, we have less water coming from the sky during the growing season. Again, your soil will tell you a lot. If you have more of a finer texture soil, like silt and clay, you tend to have more available water than when you have sandier soil. So knowing that is helpful. So, again, what are you watering? Check your plants. Mid-morning before the plant goes into the hottest part of the day is when we tend to set our timers. That same with you, Maggie. You tend to water your plants early in the morning. You want to check your beds individually. Just like Rich said, a lot of times, he used that moisture meter in the beginning, but he's pretty confident of his system, and he kind of knows that, yeah, things are growing well. But if you've got a new bed or a new type of plant, you need to just be checking. You can use a meter. You can even use a screwdriver to just go down to that 3-inch level, bring it up and see, is there moist soil on that screwdriver or not? You can, dig down there and grab some soil and use this feel and ball method. I mean, if you can make a snake out of it, you probably have enough water in there. There's a lot of resources out there. Maggie and Rich are part of the Master Gardeners here in Laramie County, and it's just a large group. Probably, I would think it's the biggest Master Gardener group in the state. And they work with University of Wyoming Extension. Either the extension educators or the Master Gardeners, they will go do what? Yard calls, right? You can call them and they'll come and visit your garden, your irrigation system to see. You can say, Maggie, I have a problem. I just cannot get this to work. What do I do? And then they need to, part of their ability to be Master Gardeners is they need to chalk volunteer hours every year. So they're looking for people to help. Local conservation districts, like where I work, will assist people. We'll do, we call them technical assistance field visits, and go out and see how we can help. Irrigation ranch supply companies, will probably help you with the components in the store. Local nurseries, and then the Natural Resource Conservation Service. They tend to, the NRCS, tend to help larger landowners with larger irrigation systems, but I think they can help smaller systems as well. This is a great University of Wyoming Extension bulletin called the Wyoming Small Acreage Irrigation booklet. You can go to the Barnyards and Backyards site. If you've never been there, you need to. That's a wonderful site that we have based on Wyoming gardening and agriculture. I want to thank some of my colleagues for some of these slides, and this is a picture of a ladybug on my valve on my wheel line on our ranch. So, do you have any questions for us?
I just want to say on the drip irrigation, I've spent years repairing it and going to Lowe's and Home Depot and trying to piecemeal all this stuff together. And last year my wife told me about DripWorks, or there's several websites, and you can buy a whole kit, and it comes with pressure reducers, and you can get all the lines, different ones, so it's, you get bags of fittings, so instead of going to 8 different stores to try to find a fitting, you can order a kit and you can set up your system and then have tons of parts left over.
Great.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with DripWorks, Maggie?
I don't buy much, but hoof plugs at the local hardware stores. They just don't carry whatever we use. So.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for your time.